Good morning, 6 o'clock. Happy Wednesday to you. Soccer's international governing body has been thrown into a deep crisis this morning. Federal prosecutors in Switzerland have opened criminal proceedings against FIFA related to the awarding of the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. Lawyers say they have seized electronic data and documents at FIFA's headquarters in Switzerland. Police will question 10 executive committee members who took part in the votes in December of 2010 connected to awarding the World Cup to Russia and Qatar. Today's announcement comes hours after 6 soccer officials were arrested in a separate U.S. investigation into millions of dollars in bribes and kickbacks. FIFA is scheduled to elect a new president on Friday. Back here at home, a street racing incident in Surrey late last night has sent 4 people to hospital. It happened just before midnight at 176th Street and 16th Avenue. Police believe there were 2 vehicles racing, with one of them losing control and slamming into a semi, wedging the car under the trailer. Firefighters had to use the jaws of life to free the most badly injured patient. One person is now being investigated for impaired driving. A West Vancouver man has been charged with sexual assault against a teenager. Puria Muhabi is accused of sexually assaulting a drunk girl at his home in January. West Vancouver police later learned of a second similar alleged assault. Police say the 28-year-old worked and volunteered in youth and sports programs. He faces 3 charges and has been released on bail. He's set to appear in court again later today.
We are, given the overall circumstances, very concerned to actively investigate and identify and analyze any interactions that the accused may have had with any other youth. So we are encouraging members of the community or any person who believes they may have information with regard to this investigation to contact our detective, Matt Dawson.
Well, if it wasn't clear before, it certainly is now. The Tsleil-Waututh Nation in North Vancouver says it is denying approval of the proposed Trans Mountain pipeline expansion based on the findings of an independent assessment. The report says Kinder Morgan's pipeline and tanker project posed unacceptable risks. It says the likelihood of oil spills would increase if the expansion is allowed and would seriously threaten the habitat and wildlife in Burrard Inlet and also negatively impact the culture and the community's way of life. The nation says the federal government refuses to address its concerns.
This is a very innovative and world-class assessment. It relies on 6 expert reports. All of those reports confirm what the nation's been saying for some time. This project will cause significant impacts to Burrard Inlet and will impact Tsleil-Waututh's title, rights, and interests in the territory if it goes forward.
Meantime, a new report is warning of the big environmental impact if the province secures a number of LNG terminals. The report, commissioned by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, says even though LNG burns cleaner than in conventional gas, greenhouse gas emissions are greater when you factor in the process of fracking. There are other factors like water contamination and usage.
If you compare gas to coal, gas has half the CO2 emissions at the burner tip of coal. However, you have to look at full cycle emissions from the wellhead through the pipelining process, through the liquefaction process, through transport and tankers and regasification. If you look at the full cycle emissions, and if you consider methane emissions, which are much more potent as a greenhouse gas than CO2, then you get a different story.
The Doctors of BC is our province's doctors advocacy group, and it now has a new controversial leader. Dr. Brian Day won the election for president by a single vote. He's the former head of the Canadian Medical Association and is also the co-owner of the Cambie Surgery Centre in Vancouver. The for-profit clinic is in a legal battle with the provincial government over access to private medicine. Day's lawsuit centers around what he claims is a constitutional right to access private clinics.
The president cannot come into the association and put his own personal agenda on the association. Our policy is determined by the membership at large and by the board as a whole. And it's the president's responsibility to reflect the views of all of the membership.
A young false killer whale rescued from Tofino will not be returned to the wild. Chester was just a couple of weeks old when he was found stranded in critical condition on Chesterman Beach last summer. Against the odds, he survived and has been recovering at the Vancouver Aquarium. An expert panel convened by Fisheries and Oceans says Chester doesn't have the skills to survive on his own.
Ideally, Chester would be with other pseudo-orcas, but currently there's not a suitable situation where that could occur. The next step was to have Chester in an environment where it could be with other dolphins. And in Canada, there's only a couple aquaria that have dolphins that would work, and Vancouver Aquarium being one of those facilities.
No other false killer whale found stranded at the same age as Chester has been able to survive in the wild. He'll be gradually moved in with the Pacific white-sided dolphin Helen, whose poolmate Hannah passed away over the weekend. Well, last week's fire and 13-hour disruption on the SkyTrain system has cost Translink almost $400,000. Reports suggest the bird's nest blaze high above Terminal Avenue caused about $25,000 in damages. Revenues lost by free transit rides totaled around $375 grand. No one was hurt during this incident, but thousands of people were very frustrated, of course, by what they call a lack of communication between the transit operator and riders.